Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Karate Does Jiu-Jitsu. My name is Patrick, and today is a special video because I received my brown belt. I have a little video of the belt presentation and some of my very first rounds as a brown belt. Let's jump into it. So we had just finished about an hour-long open mat, a master's open mat with a bunch of upper belts, and my coach James here surprised me with this brown belt. At first, I thought he was just kind of playing around, so I was playing around with him. But then I looked down and I noticed that he was actually tying a new belt around my waist. So that was very unexpected, and I was thrilled to get that belt, of course, especially with a lot of my friends and training partners there, including Danny, my longest term training partner, and he also received his brown belt. Both of us have been having recent success in tournaments. We've been purple belts for maybe a little over a year and a half, and our coach felt it was time for us to be promoted. Brown belt is an exciting belt because it's the last stop on the way to black belt, which also means that it's a little bit intimidating. So I have a lot of training to do, and first up we have some training against Brandon. Brandon Kemmer is a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and this was actually the last day before he received his purple belt. After the rounds that we did in this training session, he was promoted, which in my previous video, I had done the last rounds with my other training partner, David, his last rounds as white belts, and then he got promoted that same day. So we have a running theme now of showing off the last rolls as a lower belt, and then students get promoted, which is kind of cool to see. So we start off here by playing open guard, have sleeves and collar connection. I'm looking for an opening, but what I'm eventually working for here is I like to expose the back with a sleeve grip with my right hand, a cross sleeve grip, and then a tricep grip. Brandon knows this, so as I get this grip and I look to pull his arm across my center line, hip out, he just goes to his back. And by doing that, he defends my ability to take his back, but of course he gives up the sweep. Now I'm working on passing his guard, and I managed to get past his knee and hip line. He's thinking about going belly down there for a second. And Brandon's a strong guy, so he's maintaining these frames. And even as I'm dropping my weight down with my hips, it's definitely a challenge at first. So we have this interesting scramble where he just kind of ragdolls me around. I find my way to get back through his legs here and do manage to solidify the pass. So after resetting to make sure we don't hit any training partners, we go back to the same position. And my next goal here is I'm looking to go knee on belly, and hopefully proceed either into mount or to taking his back. So with my left knee, I close off that space at his hip, and then you see I switch my hand against that hip. He feels that I'm going to progress here, so he goes into turtle position. I'm trying to stay back on his hips so he can't roll. And Brandon has a very good turtle. We've been working this in class recently, so I'm looking for a way to sneak my leg in there. And you'll see it as I'm kind of putting this pressure on his back, this causes him to open up. I managed to get one hook in. And using that hook, I'm going to start to attack his collars and threaten his neck, which usually will open up some space to proceed. I'm doing a little interesting hook here with my left leg as I'm looking for the collars to set up this bow and arrow choke. And what I was doing is I'm just trying to control his hips. Obviously, you want to get both hooks in, but in this case, I did almost like a reverse hook, which achieved the same result. And that really limited his ability to escape his hips, allowing me to then control his collar and eventually finish with that choke. After chatting about it a little bit, we reversed the positions. This was a sparring round where we started with one person in a guard position, one person on top. It was Brandon's turn to start in guard. I know he likes to play De La Hiva and reverse De La Hiva, so I'm just keeping my hip line actually a little further away from him and attempting to clear my legs. I do that back step and elevate his leg and his hips just to make sure that his hips are facing away from me. And this allows me to drop my head into his chest, flattening out his shoulders, as we see here. Brandon stops to ask a question here for a second, he's asking me which way should he push the head? And this is an interesting one. So if he ends up pushing my head down towards his legs, then what that actually does is it allows me to continue turning towards his head and solidify my own pass. So what he really wants to do is take his left hand and push my head towards his own head. And this will allow him to create space without allowing me to finish the pass. So we finished talking about that, restarted from the same position. And unfortunately for him, after explaining that, I know exactly what he wants to do. So I'm still able to finish the pass. But the round ends here. So it was a good, solid round. And I was happy to train with Brandon on his last training session before getting promoted. Next up, we have Coach Sergio, who you've seen on this channel many times. One of my other black belt coaches. And once again, we have one person starting on top, one person starting in a guard. He's looking for reverse de la Hiva and a kind of a kiss of a dragon entry here. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take my right hand in this case with a collar grip, and I'm blocking his ability to rotate under my legs. By placing my hand as a barrier there, it forces him to instead change tactics and wrestle up, which of course he's incredible at. That's one of his main strengths. As well as his judo. So he does hit a great sweep here, a takedown, and is working to pass my guard. My guard retention is something I've been focusing heavily on recently, and I'm proud of my ability to kind of focus on keeping that guard here. I've also been looking for more leg attacks because I know that knee bar entries, toe holds are now something I'm going to have to look out for as a brown belt. So I look for one, and it doesn't quite work out, but I managed to maintain my guard. As I say that, I switched to something called shin on shin guard, which is kind of a newer guard for me. And whenever you work something new, you always are at risk of a failure. So in this case, it leads to him passing my guard because it's not something I'm very good at yet. And that's not going to stop me from attempting to work through it. That's how we progress. In this case, I'm looking to, of course, re-guard. Sergio loves knee ride, knee on belly. And by spinning into him, it forced him to move on to north-south position here. My main goal here is to stay relaxed. A lot of people panic in these positions and do big movements, thereby exposing their arms. So even though I feel him isolating a collar here, I'm just making sure that I stay calm and I don't put myself in too much danger. I'm also looking to hopefully hook onto one of these legs. He does throw that leg over into mount position, and I use that big movement to kind of turn almost into turtle and hook onto one of his legs. By doing this, I can then re-guard into half guard, turning back into him, and the fight for passing the guard continues. As I mentioned before, now that I'm a brown belt, knee bars and toe holds are fair game. So Sergio sees an opportunity for a toe hold. I spin out. Luckily, I have pretty flexible ankles from my karate training. And we're back to a standing position into wrestling. I sprawl out as he looks for that double leg, but he hangs on. Goes for kind of a fancy move here, and I managed to capitalize by following his hips over, which puts me in a mount position. Obviously, this is incredibly strong for me, and I'm trying to keep my hips heavy. Truthfully, and this is something that we all have to work on, I never expect to be in mount position against Sergio, so my brain kind of shuts off a little bit. When you don't expect to be in these positions against people that are better than you, sometimes you'll react differently than against someone who you expect to do better against. So if I were, with a blue belt or a white belt and I had him in mount position, I would be attacking almost fearlessly. But with that psychological thought of, oh, I'm against a black belt who I hardly ever, if ever, get in mount, and you play more defensively. By doing this, Sergio has the tempo, and he was leading the exchange, and he managed to get his guard back, leading all the way back to a sweep. And with this sweep in this over-under position, he's going to sink his hips down and finish with a knee bar of his own. So now there's only maybe 20, 30 seconds left in this round. And while it finishes up, I just want to reiterate a couple things that we touched on in this video, and specifically in this round with Coach Sergio. First of all, don't be afraid to try new things. By playing a newer type of guard, of course, I got my guard pass, but I also trust my ability to regain my guard. And it's something I've been working on recently. And if you trust your ability to regain your guard and you trust your ability to defend, that gives you more opportunities to be offensive. If you don't have your trust in your own ability there, you can never open up because you're afraid of getting swept, afraid of getting put on your back, and then the round is just going to go downhill. So you have to play super defensively, which I did in mount position against Sergio, and that ended up biting me. So work on your defense to increase your offense, and don't be afraid to try new things. So those were some of my very first rounds as a new brown belt. Thank you so much to my coaches, James and Sergio. James for all the work he puts in at my school, and Sergio for training with me regularly as a student training partner. And congratulations again to Danny on his brown belt and Brandon on his purple belt. It's great to see all of us rise up together. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.